Well, hello YouTube, it's me, Fortmaster, and welcome back to another Zaktact reaction, because I haven't done one in a while. The last one I did was an intro to the world of Lancer, and, you know, it's another one of those sort of, like, super future sci-fi series about, like, the future of humanity, and, you know, we've somehow gotten, like, in contact with some sort of eldritch being or something like that that's messing everything up, though in this case it seems to be more technological rather than just, you know, hell, like in 40K. But, you know, it's been a while since I watched that, and I want to get through, you know, more of these and actually find out more about this universe. Just because, again, it looks different. Again, the whole thing around it is, you know, it's based on, like, mech combat and stuff like that. So, you know, that's always cool. Yeah, so today I'm going to be watching Lancer lore, The Fall of Humanity. Geez, that doesn't sound foreboding at all. And given the fact that, you know, right underneath this video is a YouTube warning about climate change, gee, I wonder what could happen. So yeah, with all that out of the way, original video is linked in the description if you haven't seen it yet for some reason. Corner video will lead to my Let's Play of the day. And yeah, with all that out of the way, let's get this thing started then, shall we?
Hi, hello, welcome to Lancer, or more about it, or specifically, I mean, you've seen the title. If you're wondering what Lancer is, well, I have a wonderful video right there for you to go and see. It's a very, very, very rough but quick intro to some of the general stuff in the setting.
You know, I also did a reaction to that, so, you know, check out that video if you haven't seen that one yet.
But today, in specific, we're talking about a cheery topic. Well, no, the opposite of cheery. It's the fall of humanity.
Of course, because humanity always has to fall.
The fall, or the end of the Anthropocene, or the Dark Age, or the mix of things. The budding humanity that began to curl in on itself like a dead spider. Now, when it comes to this,
Not
and
showing
Lancer
that.
lore in general, the stuff that's from the fall and before it, and before Union, is very dodgy. Some of the earliest of guaranteed known events are, or at least when it's important and pertinent to the setting, is 6,000 years before 0 BU. Or no. 0 AU? After U? 0 U. When it comes to anything before Union or before 0 U, it's a bit vague. It's a time lost to history to an extent.
Okay, yes.
Not quite, but you'll see. Namely because it's a dark age. Isn't that wonderful? It's not worse than a dark age. It's not just post-apocalypse. It's in fact majority apocalypse and then post-apocalypse.
Oh, okay, so the entire time was just, okay, great. You know, again, I'm starting to get a very serious 40K vibes from there, from like the Age of Strife and stuff like that.
And then we get on with 0 U. I guess to begin with is talking about the Anthropocene, or what the fall marks the end of it. Or the end of the fall marks the end of the Anthropocene, which is a geological term for the time period where humans have had a grand impact on the planet Earth. Can you see where this is going? 6,000 BU, before Union. The status of the Sol system, and of humanity and of Earth. They have a few off-world colonies, namely the Moon and Mars are actually quite well populated. There's some stations out near some of the gas giants. It's not going that bad. There's massive shipyard docks out in orbit. It's relatively, at least when it comes to the space exploration front, beginning pretty well.
Okay, again, this is just the time span of all this. So, 6,000 years before the beginning of the era that, you know, the setting takes place in is already like possibly hundreds of years into the future from us. God, yeah, far future, gotta love it.
Earth's dying, which prompts the building of the first of the 10.
Arcs.
Apollo. Man, that lost all the drama from it. The 10 are massive, just gotta keyword that in there, generational ships that were sent off in the deep space at sublight, because the technology for near light wasn't developed yet, or at least wasn't known. In 6,000 years BU, before Union, is when the Apollo was built, the first of the 10. All the nations were scrambling to make their own different generational ships. The Apollo was the test flight. Everything else was being built around the same time as well, but Apollo was the first finish and the first sent. And the Apollo would land on a planet called Caracas. The trade baronies. Though they're not that yet at this time, so kind of... Well, actually, no, we're not touching on that. They'll get their own thing. Their own spotlight. Nah, this is for humanity's death. They can sit over there. Message comes back from the Apollo, proves that, oh my goodness, it was actually a successful mission. the remaining 9 are launched. And shortly after that, and by shortly it's in the case of like a century, the remnants of Earth begin to infight, and the system at large.
Of course.
Everything that had been going on and what Union historians had documented was the Earth was already falling apart before the Apollo was launched. Climate change, Death. Isn't that fun? Well, it's not climate change not just climate change, but it was like geoengineering projects that went wrong, other global conflicts, internal fighting, disease running rampant, and, by the time Apollo and the other 9 leave, nuclear warfare. Nah, it's not good. So it's all some of the worst case scenarios of the projected climate change end.
You know what that reminds me of? So back in high school, I came up with this little, I don't know what you call, like a setting or something like that, basically where you have like the last man on Earth, and he basically, being alone for so long, he basically starts building machines, and over the course of hundreds of years, like steadily replacing parts of himself, he basically creates a civilization of robots that he's like the king of. And like the beginning point of that was I always coined it as, the worst year in human history, where it just like, everything, basically, modern day at this point where everything starts. And then, massive asteroid impacts right between China and India. So, already from that, several billion people dead. The ash and smoke and dust blots out huge portions of the sky. Earth cools down, crops begin to fail, and just then when resources start going scarce, wars start breaking out. Again, just worst year in human history. And from that's when like everything starts going bad, and then he's basically all alone with like, with very scattered, if at all, populations of humans that are like so genetically small that they're basically destined to die out anyway. But yeah, that made me think of that instantly. I really got to think about that again.
And then nuclear war put on top of that? And that's just Earth. We're not even talking about the stations and various
and the other
colonies
planets,
falling into disarray, which very few survived. Now, this is the actual falling of the fall. How long do you think it lasts? I'll wait.
Given that the setting takes place 6,000 years after that, I'm going to say the fall takes place over, I'd say like probably a good 1,000 years plus a little over.
5,000 years.
Okay, so 5,000 years of that was falling, and then it was 1,000 years of rebuilding afterwards. Okay.
5,000 year dark age. 5,000 years. That's a long time. There's the point that Earth was stabilizing a bit, some of the forest fires going out, plants growing back, the few remaining humans becoming resilient that did actually survive, only about 100,000, or a few 100,000.
Wonderful.
And again, the few 100,000 were from Earth's peak, which was in the way more billions than we are right now. But as the human population stabilizes and then actually begins to grow, stable food crops are brought back, things can actually survive, animals, the few that remain, are actually spreading and diversifying, again, like over 5,000 year period at this point.
Yeah.
But early humanity, or at least what it thought of itself as early humanity, the survivors, managed to move around, form tribes, take down old ancient walking machines, or worship them, or hunt them down, use.
Okay, so we're basically doing Horizon Zero Dawn. Okay, interesting.
Them, relics of the past scavenged for and then used against one another, tribes, towns, kingdoms, empires. It all repeated once again. That was in this period, which is such an entertaining idea of basically getting back to the Age of Sail again, but in a post-apocalypse, where you have some high-tech stuff lying around. It's an interesting image. But the Age of Sail equivalent empires, or at least my guesstimate of what level of tech they were, ended up discovering one of the massive vaults. Turns out, before the end of everything, there were secret vaults laid way underground with various bits of human tech, data, artifact storage, and just stuff to reboot civilization.
I mean, as you do.
Amongst those as well are early developments of near-light drives. Now, if you know the time-wise and when those vaults were closed, that meant when the generational ships were still being made and about to be sent off, someone on Earth already had near-light travel, or close to it. And they hoarded it. Now the question also goes into what other tech was hoarded away, which was actually quite a bit, but it's left outside of, there were multiple vaults, they were scavenged for, wars fought over them, ancient tech brought back to bear, and this would come into the event called the Little Wars.
Okay, so just thinking about it, I mean, he did say it was, the initial design, so it could have been a design that before it was actually built was purely theoretical. I mean, I could potentially see it that these designs were, just being thought up and weren't far enough along in, development and design that you could actually implement them into the generational ships. So they were put in the vault, when everything started going bad, for the possibility of when somebody found them, they would have the time and resources, if there were people still around, that they'd be able to continue developing them to, actually being functional FTL travel. And, just the people who actually designed it didn't give themselves enough credit, and they actually did design it, functioning before everything.
I think it's retroactively called the Little Wars because of the way Union developed and how long it's been, how large the conflicts have gotten, to be compared to this one planet. Because that's the thing. When you start in your modern time, which is 5,000, you having planet conflicts on multiple system fronts across a galaxy, one squabbles of empire with some high-tech stuff on one world begin to look quite little.
Yeah.
Also for political beliefs, because of what would come from the Little Wars. Because of out of all the infighting, I say infighting, but because of all the warring, fighting, ancient tech brought to bear again, the few survivors of that conflict, again, have put down their weapons and agreed to form an organization that would focus on the preservation of humanity.
Yeah, because at this point, we're at the post-apocalypse.
Because as the vaults had proved, they were not the first. And they were going to make sure they weren't the last. And they made a union. And the calendar started again. And also what pre-fall humanity was like, we also don't know. Outside of consumerist and very, very, very industrialized. Now, some benefits of the fall, or downsides, depending on how you look at it, is most of what I just covered is all you're going to get. Or at least in the sense of what you'll find in the base book. Because there's not much more information on pre-fall humanity. Outside of a few artifacts here or there that have been found, ancient tech or ancient structures built, not much of it left Cradle, unless there was secret stuff, or especially because the Near-Light drive was found from a vault, not after. And then the 5 voices, you get into stuff of what were the true technological levels of pre-fall humanity, or where was their tech aligned, because they got close to some of the tech in Lancer in modern times. The question is, where? So you can run it in your games that pre-fall humanity had some really, really high-tech stuff, but it was kept to the elites, hence why the majority of humanity still suffered. Or it focused on things like weaponry. Maybe there was a private generational ship that was sent off long, long ago with that Near-Light drive that's just full of these generations of bureaucrats and high-level CEOs and exec descendants.
Again, yeah, it could definitely see that too. I mean, again, I'm sticking with my idea that that the tech was still very much theoretical, and they were putting it in the vault just as, a big sort of what if and just to protect it. Because again, the idea of being this close to achieving FTL travel and then having it wiped out due to an apocalypse, and then if anybody survives afterwards, them having to go having to do everything all over again. Oh, I mean, if I was on the sidelines and the afterlife watching that would hurt.
And it just hasn't landed yet because technology has outpaced them. Maybe ancient humanity was just on the verge in some private sectors on breaking paracausal tech. Maybe they sent some ancient AI terraformers out there long ago on top of the generational ships, or before them. Maybe there's more things like the 5 voices out there somewhere, waiting to be awakened again, or running programs who knows the results of.
Yeah, looking through the playlist here. I definitely want to know what those 5 voices he's talking about are.
And if you're wondering what the 5 voices are, and some of the other stuff of Union, how they actually got ahead of Vance, Near-Light drives, and the conflicts with its previous colonies, and the 10, well, hey, if this video does well, I'll do more Lancer. I'm happy to do it. Thank you all for watching. I know
again,
this was
given
a bit
that there
short,
are 25
but,
videos
again,
in the playlist
not much on
now.
the fall. It's left for you to be filled in, or isn't necessarily important to the modern story of Lancer. What really is the fact it did fall, came back, and the history of Union and the rest of the galaxy since then. At least that's what's relevant. I mean, ancient humanity didn't really get out of its solar system that much. Kind of the key thing with that is it was the Great Filter. Or, at least we think. At least Union thinks. Question is, there's some people in Union that don't.
I mean, you never know. That could have been a great filter, and there's another one coming up again. Because, you know, there's always multiple.
Oh.
Hi.
Hi. What am I doing here again? Right, I was supposed to be in this video to tell you about a Patreon I now have. Yeah, that's down in the description. Details will be there and on the Patreon itself. But if you want to throw a few bucks that way, that'll be great. There's more information in a post on the Patreon at the moment, so if you have any questions, head there. Anyway, back to the video. And you, thanks for watching. Bye.
Oh, God. Okay, again, the more I hear... so, like, I love these sort of... I really do like these sort of darker depictions of sci-fi, though, again, I do like, you know, lighter depictions as well. But just like this and 40K. And granted, I will say that I've been kind of getting a little tired of 40K just from nothing in particular, just, you know, from constant exposure. And, you know, and while, you know, the way it looks is, you know, iconic, you know, the Gothic architecture, the skulls, there's just something about, you know, a more traditional sci-fi setting where, you know, after, you know, the post-apocalypse, then you're going into this actual, like, more traditional high-tech world as opposed to where everything in 40K is just sort of stagnant and just sort of slowly decaying as secrets and stuff are steadily forgotten and over time and stuff like that. And again, just the scale of time. So, I mean, obviously 40K, if I know my timeline well enough, so... like, future humanity survived up until... what was it, like 20 or 25,000 years into the future? If I remember my lore correctly. And then there's the Age of Strife, which I think lasted for like 5,000 years, and during that time, that's when the Emperor started conquering Earth and started his Great Crusade. And then around 30K is when the Great Crusade started in earnest. And that lasted for a bit before, you know, everything happened, and then, you know, 10,000 years passed, and then we're in 40K, yay. But on here, so, again, we have potentially, you know, an ancient humanity that was, again, at the very least, several hundred years more advanced than us, and evidently they didn't end up fixing the Earth, so that's sad. But then, 6,000 years after them is the beginning, of the era that Lancer takes place in. And then you're like, oh God, when does Lancer, like, is there a date for when Lancer takes place? So the in-universe time is like almost 11, or is over 11,000 years past, like, a super advanced future from our perspective. So, again, it's not 40,000 years in the future, but it's starting to get there. Like, you're almost halfway there at the very least. Jeez, it's nuts. Again, you gotta love, like, when you take a setting that's so far in the future, just the things that you can do with a setting like that. Not only technological, but, like, sociological, and just how, like, what weird curveballs can you throw into a timeline that long? Oh, God love it. And I can't wait to see more of just what's going on in this universe. So, yeah, that'll be it for now. So, of course, as always, original videos linked in the description if you haven't seen it for some reason. Corner video will lead to my Let's Play of the day. And yeah, with all that out of the way, I hope you guys liked. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you have not, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.